Redux, where we take your favorite franchises out of the analog era and bring them back to 2021. I'm your host, pop culture punk Chris Styles, joined as always by my co-host with the most, film professor Ian Klink.
Hey, everybody.
Also on the panel today, very special guest, the man behind Fandom Spotlite, sometimes known as the governor himself, Captain Kyle Williamson.
Hey, I'm here. Whoa.
And
Whoa.
one great Terminator guest calls for another, so we also have the incredibly talented screenwriting sensation. His first feature is currently being shot, coming to you live from Miami, Sean Gold.
What up? They said I'll be back, and I'm back.
Hey-o.
There he is. Dynamite dropping, my man. Dynamite dropping.
Wait. Are we doing Kindergarten Cop? Because that's the only one that I remember him saying, I'm back.
Yes, Kindergarten
Oh,
Cop.
that's true.
Terminator 3, he said it. I thought this was a Terminator thing. Wait, if we're doing Kindergarten Cop, I'm not prepared.
I just have to say, though, what I appreciate is Dolph Lundgren made, if you could make Kindergarten Cop look like Picasso, they did it by having Kindergarten Cop 2 with Dolph Lundgren. Like they made that movie more valuable based off that one movie alone. That's meta, people. That's all that is.
Well, if you're listening out there in the chat, there is no fate but what we make for ourselves. And what we really need are your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. So send us those in the chat, please. Before we get into how we would fix this ailing and struggling franchise, which we love dearly, we got to talk about what we love about Terminator, how this movie came into our lives. I'm going to guess it rhymes with VHS for everybody. But if you guys saw the first one, is there anyone here that saw the first one in the theaters?
I wasn't allowed. It was rated R. Are you crazy? The violence, nudity. Oh my God, no.
And at home, you can fast forward through that stuff.
I remember seeing T2 in the theater. I remember my dad taking me to go. So I saw T2 first, and then years later. But again, the best part about James Cameron, his rule is always a sequel should not. You don't have to watch the first one in order to watch the sequel. So you kind of get everything you need in that first intro. You don't have to watch the first one to enjoy T2. But then years later, I'm going, wait a minute, there's oh wait, T2. Okay, I get it. Oh, there's a first one. Okay. And then years later, I remember a friend of mine had the great Artisan VHS 2 tape had Terminator 1 and 2 in it. It had like the gray box with the little window, and it was just the half face, the half Photoshop face.
Oh yeah.
That was box.
Yeah, that's where I came into Terminator. That's how I remember being in Wellman, Iowa, watching that one. So
yeah, that was about as sexy as a VHS box set could get.
Well, speaking of VHS editions, I had the large box that was the 2 set of T2 with all the deleted scenes, including the Kyle Reese dream sequence, where he's saying, yes, Sarah, you're going to have to protect her son, all that kind of thing. Yeah, I sounded like
one of the great cinematic cameos that was left on the cutting room floor.
It was severely missed because, as we all know, there's only one good Terminator, and that's Terminator 1, to be honest.
And that segues.
Agree.
Before we get into all that, it does segue very nicely into what I loved, and kind of my entry point obviously was VHS, but I think the whole Terminator franchise exists and works, and we love it because it was explained to us by Michael Biehn. And his Kyle Reese, no disrespect to any of the others, there have actually been some great portrayals of Kyle Reese that were not done by Michael Biehn as well. But the way he explains everything when they're on the run and they're in the cars and they're hiding from Arnold and all this shit, like the 600 series had rubber skin, like we spotted them easy, like they branded us by laser, like you believe the whole thing because of the way he explains it. And I kind of agree.
He was suffering from PTSD, obviously.
That's all he does. That's all he does.
Yeah. Doesn't feel remorse or pity or pain. And it absolutely will not stop ever until you're dead. Like, you believe that shit.
Oh, yeah.
But you believe he believes it.
I don't know. He sold it.
He really did like that. And that's hard, that's usually the boring shit for an actor to do, and like in a script. But like Cameron does it in a way, and Michael Biehn does it in a way that it's great. And, also Linda Hamilton, her reactions to it are like great. Like, we can't make shit like that. I'm not stupid. Like,
I do have to say, though, I have watched the first one many, many times, as Ian will probably approve of.
Absolutely.
I've never heard him say the future is not set. There is no fate for what we make for ourselves. Never in Terminator 1, even though that's like the sticking point in T2 is that no fate. My father said that. Not in the movie I saw, buddy. No.
He actually says it in the little tunnel. Remember? He recites the speech in the little drainage ditch.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for everything you've done through the years. He says that, but I don't ever recall, and I can watch it again, but I don't recall him ever saying.
Watch it and come back and let us know.
All right, I'll be back.
There you go. Yeah, he put it in. That was good. That was a good segue.
And that's okay. And that's okay because it's Terminator 1. So go enjoy. I mean, that's completely,
So, I mean, okay, so T1 versus T2. I mean, T2 comes out. Obviously, we love T2. It like is a game-changing film. Ian prefers T1. I gotta say, T1 is a bit of a tighter screenplay. Like, I think James Cameron honestly peaked with Aliens. Like, no disrespect, I love James Cameron, but I think Aliens was like the absolute best. And T2 is like just a little bit less good. Maybe it's right there. Maybe it's better. I don't know. It's kind of irrelevant, but it's like right around there. Like Aliens to T2 is sort of like the apex of the Cameron Mountain for me. But there's a lot of things like Aliens and like T2 that it's like almost like Nirvana. It's very 90s where it's like not that thing that bothers me. It's all the imitators that bothered me. Remember, for the next 3 years, everything morphed after T2. Like cereal commercials had morphing shots and shit. Like everything was morphing.
Michael Jackson morphed. I mean,
it was in a Michael. Yeah, in the black and white video. A million people morphed in that. That movie.
And there was the Robert Patrick appearance in Wayne's World. Have you seen this boy?
Oh yeah.
No. I'm just saying this is my problem with it all, and this might open up a discussion beyond this series, but this is the hardest part about damn time traveling movies. All right. The first one sets it up that is such a perfect circle that it's great. I mean, it's like Highlander, right? We've had this conversation, Highlander, before. Highlander itself, perfect movie. It ends in such that perfect circle that it did it. We didn't need a sequel. And I think Terminator, in a weird way, is the same way. You don't need the sequel, right? We get it. We the baby, she's pregnant. We know it's Kyle's baby. Oh, there is going to be a war. Great. And yet I am a fan of T2. There's no doubt about it. But then the kinks start getting geared up again, because now how do you explain this? Well, if he got rid of the chip and he burned everything, then how did they come? You just, every time you get a sequel, and then, pissed me off like no other is, you get the classic Back to the Future 3. Hey, it never happened. Whatever. 3 movies, it doesn't care. I'm in a train ship. Bye. It just, that's the hardest part for me. And that's why I think T1, perfect movie, right? It's got the perfect circle. That's it. I don't need anything else. I don't know. I'm going to leave that out there for you guys to.
Should I rebuttal it?
Please do. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it is a closed loop, and the sequel does ruin it. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you have, you destroy the chip, you destroy everything, well, how are they still there? So then it's either because, okay, well, we're just lazy writing it, or it's like, well, we're going to create a franchise. But at the same time, you want a good movie that continues the story. But my main gripe is like, time itself, if you research all into it and the time travel and how it works in physics and the quantum state and everything, if T2 is going to happen, that means T1's kind of irrelevant, because John Connor and the Terminator already exist in the future, which means that you can't really kill Sarah Connor because John Connor has to exist, and you can't really, the machine has to be stopped so that Skynet can be born. So it essentially, it's kind of like a predestination paradox. You can't, you can alter the fate, but the quote by Einstein, where anyone that studies physics knows that the distinction between past, present, and future is an illusion. So both movies are kind of taking place at the same time, at least in the quantum realm, at least in the physics realm. But it's a moot point for number one and number two because the future already exists. The future self is already there. So yeah, it's tough. Number one's a perfect circle, but number two's got some really sweet scenes and whatnot. And I mean, number three was of course is a classic. The best one of the entire series. You couldn't top it until Genesis came out. You couldn't. You couldn't top such perfection on screen, such artwork. But yeah, it's essentially. I mean, you can have T2. It doesn't. Everybody should have disappeared at the end. That's just how it should have been. It should have everyone should have faded away, and that would have been it. But we have a movie, and we have Hollywood, and we have box office returns and merchandising, and the quasi sequel T2 at Universal Studios in 3D. So that
was cool. One. That was cool. That was totally worth it. I'm gonna give the series that.
See, all of a sudden, T1 million. Hold on, I'm sitting here and I'm in the movie.
Well, for that.
That's still T2 3D is still the best 3D I've ever seen in my life. Like it beat anything they did with Avatar, anything else I've seen in theaters nowadays. I don't know what kind of technology was in that 3D, but it was pretty awesome for the time. At least I don't know. I was like 14 or 13 or something when I was there.
It's still held up. It's still held up. I mean, you felt like you were part of like that tour group that was like under attack, and then there's Arnold and there's the actors, and I was like, oh man, that was the best thing ever. Now it's not there anymore. So if everyone tries to see it, the best you got is like a YouTube video from like 1996, someone shaky cam, someone commenting, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. This is great. Shut up, I'm filming
check it out, Dad. Dad, look.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Sean is a fan of T3 because of the ever-expanding bust line, and how that can be fixed. But actually, yes, I have to agree with Ian that T1, it was perfectly consistent. There was no paradox, no deviations from the timeline, which actually brings me to T2, that with the many worlds theory, because the reason they didn't fade away is because obviously they created a new branching timeline, which is how, and I was explaining this to Chris and Ian last week so this is new for you, Sean, what they could have done with Terminator Dark Fate to make it a better movie. Instead of having Carl...
How can you improve upon perfection?
Very easily. A lot of people were very upset with Dark Fate because they just killed John Connor, the savior of mankind, and threw him out because he was no longer relevant. And that makes logical sense because he eliminated Skynet. Legion's the new thing. He is not the foe of Legion, so it makes sense. But because they threw him out like so much trash, people got mad. So instead of that Terminator being Carl the drapery guy, what wasn't that he was doing? He was doing drapes.
Yeah.
What they could have had.
Successful at it too. Very successful.
Yes. You will buy this drape or I will rip your head off. So
Terminator Drapes of Wrath.
That's a good
the
one.
Drapes of Wrath. That would be quite a new spin-off. But with this alternate universe, figure there is a universe where John came up, where there might have been the 1994 attack as well, but they didn't destroy everything, so Skynet still emerged. That John beat Skynet, looked at this stuff, and maybe they figured out, hey, we can actually look into other universes. And this universe where they actually defeated Skynet is going to need my help because Legion's coming. And all I know is war. It's what I've been doing my entire life. What am I going to do, retire? So he goes to that world, intercepts that Terminator after it kills his younger self from that world, reprograms it, and that's who you meet in that cabin. When they run into Carl, some old guy in a wheelchair comes out and says, hey, Mom, I know it's not Uncle Bob, I call him Uncle Carl. And basically, it's John Connor from another universe helping them and kind of passing the torch instead of the drapes. So that's my thought, but they didn't consult me. So I'm very upset about that.
I tried to tell them, they wouldn't listen. What do they know?
You know what, Terminator franchise owners, I know you're watching. You need to consult us next time because we are all diehard Terminator fans. And, in my opinion, the franchise had problems long before Dark Fate came around. that was kind of just like the straw. That was like basically the third time we'd seen the exact same type of follow-up almost. Where, you know, with the exception of Salvation for me is the one that stands out because at least it took place in like a future war, which is now the past. Of, you know, it was like then 2018 or something, or it was 2008 or something when the movie came out.
Something like that,
yeah. Yeah. But I do want to touch on the chat before we get too much further into the sequels, because there's lots of laughs to be had there for sure. But Alex Bonafante says, sup, Alex. Carmela Torres, our buddy Mickey, says, definitely a T2 fan, but love the first one a lot too.
Yes.
More than fair.
Yes.
Alex Bonafante also says, my take on the Terminator franchise, I just wanted sequels to part two to be War Against the Machines. I wanted John Connor to become leader of resistance in the films that evoked the horror of Vietnam movies, an aesthetic Jim Cameron had experience with creating for Aliens. This is beautiful poetry, Alex. I wanted all sequels to stay on the original timeline that begins with part 1 and ends with part 2. That is poetry to me. I wish you were writing these things, Alex. Thank you for tuning in all the time, buddy. Yeah, so let's, go through. Obviously, I think Terminator 3 is basically like, it's hard to say it's not the worst. Like, I can't decide between Dark Fate and Terminator 3. Like, they're both so bad.
Shut up, Kyle. Shut up. Here's the problem. Or not Kyle, Chris. Whichever, all of you, shut up. Here's the problem, all right? The point is, the point that you're trying to make, I know what you're trying to defend that movie. And I stand here right now, sir, and say fie on you. Because that movie has the worst line of dialogue ever written for a movie. Well, Skynet happened whether we wanted it to or anyway.
I thought you were going to say talk to the hand. Okay.
Well, but that line, that one line ruined. I literally wanted to walk out of the theater because you basically said nothing really matters. You literally threw in all the kitchen sink and said, you know what? We don't care. You know, and I'm like, no, stop doing that. Do not do that. Again, it's the Back to the Future Part 3 thing all over again.
Well, if I may just state that I would never defend Terminator 3 or Genesis, or, well, maybe even, I would certainly defend Genesis more than I would defend Terminator 3, but I'm not really defending either of those, and I would never, ever, ever defend Dark Fate. I just said I couldn't decide which is the worst one of the franchise, so I'm not.
And that's
all right.
Well,
maybe I spoke. All right, Chris, I apologize. I spoke too soon. But you were basically about to say like the steak sandwich was all right. I mean, I had a steak sandwich.
No,
so I could say I'm not hungry. Okay, all right.
The only thing that worked about Terminator 3 for me, it was one scene, and it only worked at the time. It doesn't hold up at all, but it was kind of like a edge of your seat chase scene. Like the crane truck and all that stuff. I was like, okay, this is pretty intense. But now you look at it, it's like, it's all CG, so who cares?
I mean, the ending was good. at least they had them to show. Got to leave the theater. Oh, it's over.
See, here's where they ruined the ending. First of all, they ruined the whole fucking thing by not having Brad Fiedel do the music after part 2. That's just a crime against humanity. His score for T2 was absolutely one of the best.
T1.
Oh, and T1 as well.
Yeah.
But T1 sounds like 1984. T2 is timeless. That score is amazing, and he did it with some low-tech gear still. I mean, much more high-tech than he had on T1, but like Fairlight samplers and synthesizers, and that stuff is like wieldly beasts, machines to control. He always described doing the score as like him trying to get control of the machines that he had. While the machines in the movie are trying, but like you can't tell the line between the sound effects and the score in T2, and that's brilliant. I've never seen that in any film before or since.
The mechanics of making T2 are incredible. I mean, I will argue that as a movie, as a filmmaker, as a movie, T2 is way up there. I mean, I gotta be flat out honest. I mean, it changed Hollywood. It's just it came after such a great film. That's the hardest part about it.
Yeah, like even if that chase scene was good, it wouldn't compare to the bike chase in the sewer tunnels of T2. That's a great chase scene.
I do have to say, I totally disagree with you, Chris, that Dark Fate is horrible, because Dark Fate, if you look at it from a pure science fiction time travel viewpoint, they ignored Terminator 3 and Genesis and Salvation and all that stuff, and they went with Dark Fate. which came right after T2. And that actually makes a lot of sense because they did, as Ian said, Terminator 3 basically said, well, Skynet's happening no matter what you do. Dark Fate said, Skynet's gone. You took care of the problem. Congratulations. But it is inevitable that man is going to open up this AI Pandora's box, and something else is going to rise to take its place. And that is Legion. And so we have a new leader of the resistance, which, I mean, when you think about it, having one person, the entire future pivots on one person, definitely a plot device. You know, in real life, if she died or if John Connor died, someone else should rise and take that role. You know, we're not that, you know, John Connor might have been trained a lot and he might have some charisma, but someone else could have taken that role. Mankind still could have won. It didn't all pivot on one person when you're looking at logically. But I thought Dark Fate was a great follow-up, and it was logical. Again, they mishandled John Connor totally. And with my improvements, if they just like take back all the DVDs, reshoot it, and send it out with my changes, that'll be fine. But I do think Dark Fate was actually a logical.
The Kyle cut. Movie. That's what you want. The Kyle
cut. Yes.
Hashtag the Kyle cut. Get it trending on Twitter, folks. So I do want to touch on the chat. I know this is hilarious that we're jumping all over like not linear in time because it's Terminator, so it probably works fine.
It fits with the theme. It fits with the theme.
That's true. Yeah, right. It's like one of the messiest timelines ever. But I mean, with what you're saying, Sean, it's all a multiverse.
But the first thing we talked about is the most important one.
So
kindergarten cop, right?
That's right.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's, you know, we need the kindergarten Terminator, obviously. That's going to be my pitch.
It would have been perfect. It's a perfect place to hide out and wait for the target, right?
You will take a nap now.
Yeah. So in the chat, Alex Bonafante again says, Dark Fate could have been its own movie. Salvation came close to showing John Connor reaching his full potential. I think too much time passed to shoehorn Linda Hamilton and Arnold back in. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, they did miss a lot of their golden years, and I would agree. I think it's time to move on from Arnold. You know, I love Linda Hamilton, so I can't say that about her, but you know, Arnold's been there. Arnold's done like, you know, friggin' 4 out of 5 of these, or you know, he was CGI'd into one. So like,
yeah,
come
so
on,
all six. I mean,
yeah, right. Arnold's really been in all 6,
and
basically.
a theme park ride.
Yeah, and the theme park ride. So
and a Guns N' Roses music video.
Oh my God, the best music video ever.
Yeah,
I love
best
that.
music video ever. So
Axl Rose, not worth a bullet.
not waste of ammunition. Yeah.
And
oh my God,
and could have been the career highlight for Lance Henriksen if things had gone a certain way.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know if you all know that out there, but you know, Lance Henriksen really was going to be the Terminator, to the point Cameron did, you know, storyboards that have Lance Henriksen looking in it. But then Arnold came on board, and it, you know, just he was the bigger name.
And then he was just regulated to being the guy in the cop.
He's just the cop. Yeah,
just the cop guy, not even the lead cop, just like the sidekick.
He did get to be Bishop. He did get to be Bishop 2 years later.
That was his James Cameron
consolation
prize. Yeah, consolation prize. Like, I'm sorry you could be a Terminator, but here you get to be Bishop. You know,
So the chat blowing up still. Our friends over at Retro Fiend Radio say the first one is the best. T2 is fun, flashy, and cute.
Yes.
But T2 sucks because they make Arnie a hero. The first one is so cool because he's evil as hell. You never get that again. That alone makes it special. I will say that is unique. You know, it's pretty much the only movie Arnold was ever a villain, other than the incredible Batman.
Salvation. His CGI self was a villain.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's true. Yeah.
And it was a great opening day. It was a great opening day surprise because they did not promote the movie as him as the hero. I mean, it was the Terminator is terminating again. And if you watch T2, if you watch it, he does seem like a bad guy until
the mall scene. Hey, you can't come back here. You can't. You're not allowed here.
Yeah, until that moment, you think that they're both after him, and that was a genius reversal in the script. The only problem is that by that point, we all knew, you know, Arnold's the hero. I mean, after Predator, give me a break. I mean, you know, he's going to be the hero. But
I'm not going to be a villain anymore.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I think we are taking a big chance here. We don't kill enough people. We don't kill any people in the movie. Like, we need to kill people. I think it's terrible, Jim. Like, that was Arnold's take on T2 at first. He's like, we don't kill anybody? That's a terrible idea. Like, but there is more action in the chat, so I don't want anyone to be left out. Our buddy again, Alex Bonafonte, says you're welcome. The latest Terminator game did the story well enough, plenty of fan service. Was it the game for Salvation? I played that. Our buddy Mickey Torres says Salvation was good. Retro Fiend says that they have only seen the first 3 though.
Oh, they're missing out. They're missing out.
Missing out on Genesis,
yeah.
Which we have hardly talked about, which we will, I guess, at some point. Alex Bonafonte also says Catherine Brewster was set to be the new strong female lead. They could have, to borrow from Ryan Johnson, close the original loop without pooping on John Connor's legacy. And Alex Bonafonte also says, I love that song. I think he's talking about Brad Fidel's music.
You're going to be talking about the Guns N' Roses song. We'll give them A+ for either one. Both of them are equally,
both of them are
important,
top shelf stuff.
Important pieces of art. So yeah, we'll just say that they're both equally amazing.
And I'm sure.
I was going to say there are other Terminators besides Arnold that could be used. Summer Glau, I thought, was an excellent Terminator because she has that look like she's. Look at her in real life, and she doesn't look like she's quite human. Beautiful woman, but she doesn't look quite. She looks otherworldly. And Garrett Dillahunt, who I always thought of as a villain when I saw him on Sarah Connor, and then I changed my mind with Fear the Walking Dead. But he was a great Terminator. He just had the whole, I thought he was a great Terminator in the Sarah Connor Chronicles, and I wanted to see more of him. I thought that it doesn't have to always be Arnold. I mean, yes, we get it. The skin is organic. It ages. Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. But, they could have done a lot more, with different Terminators. I love the fact, now we didn't talk about Genesis. Genesis was fun. It made no sense in context to the other movie, but it was fun. I didn't like them making John Connor the villain at the end. I did like the new T-1000. He was cool, but I definitely did not like that twist where John Connor became the villain and the friggin' doctor is Skynet. That didn't make sense to me either. It's like, Matt Smith as Skynet didn't like really. If you have anything to choose from, are you going to actually look like Matt Smith? If you're an AI, think about that. But yeah, I think if you ignore everything else, Genesis on its own is a fun movie. Just don't try to make any sense of it in context with anything else.
I would say that it could have been fun if it weren't for the John Connor being the villain. Like, that just is so dissatisfying. That's just such a fucking punch in the gut, and just feels like kind of a slap in the face to fans. It's like, if you need to move on from John Connor, that's fine. At this point you probably do, because you've made him the villain, and you've like ran the character into the ground, in my opinion. But we will get to that, I guess, at some point, whether our takes would involve John Connor or not.
Well, when you were a kid, didn't all of you want to be that cool John Connor with the scar from T2?
Oh yeah,
I used to have long hair.
He had a bike. He can go to the arcade by himself. I mean, what more? He was living the life.
Not Eddie.
He could hack ATMs.
Not Eddie.
With an Atari portfolio.
Yeah. And the guy from Salute Your Shorts. But no, I'm talking not about Eddie Furlong. I'm talking about the actual John Connor from the future. That little soldier.
He
walks up and he's got that scar, and you have known nothing about him. You have no context other than, I want to be that guy when I go on the playground.
That dude was like maybe the coolest John Connor we've got.
He was. And he didn't say a word. He just stood there and just did that mean gowl, that Clint Eastwood gowl, of just, I'm in charge of the future, Yeah,
it's like, puts his binoculars
down.
The
binoculars. Yeah, that was like, that's my hero right there. But then, we get, again, he's a good actor, but then we get the guy in number 3 who just whines the entire movie. I mean,
who is now in Fear the Walking Dead, to do another crossover from Terminator to Walking Dead.
Is he? Okay. Oh.
And he's
You're talking about Nick Stahl?
Nick Stahl. Yeah. Great actor, but gosh, that's not. And again, that's not John Connor. John Connor's binocular scar guy. That's John Connor.
And that's the actor they should have gotten in my version of Dark Fate, to be in the wheelchair, to be like, hey, Mom, because that would be perfect. Don't age up, Eddie Furlong. Just use the guy from the original Terminator, if he's still alive. I don't even know. Do you know, Ian?
I have no
I don't know,
idea.
But he would be probably, maybe a little too old now, I would think,
He's alive he's alive in the hearts of all fans out there from this series. That's what it is.
He's alive on all of our Laserdisc players.
Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
Yes, Bambino.
But I do have to say though, Kyle, I completely agree with you about the Sarah Connor Chronicles. I think by far and above, that's the best thing that's happened to the Terminator franchise post T2. And I think the format really worked. It was great television. I don't know, Fox canceled it way too early. I think what honestly killed that show was when Salvation came out that summer after their second season and they were on hiatus. And then Salvation didn't do well because it opened against Night at the Museum 2. This is why I kind of loathe little kid movies as an adult, because there's one every fucking other weekend. There's another Pixar or Cutester little movie, and they just don't seem to have the heart of the ones that we grew up on. But that's for another day.
Well, I also think that Sarah Connor Chronicles was ahead of its time in the fact that it was very serialized. If you missed the first 3 episodes, from then on, you're like, what the fuck's going on? I'm not sure who's this, what's going on. It had a great storyline. It was a bit convoluted because it's time travel, but they had all these different elements. But if you weren't watching from day one like I was, you missed stuff and you were like, I'm not sure what's going on. That's why in the old days, they used to have Star Trek was a standalone story. So you could come back.
Yeah.
If you missed that one, you could come back the next week and you could watch it and you not have to have seen the previous one. Yeah. Terminator was very serialized. I think it was released now, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, on something like Netflix, where they would drop everything, or any of the streaming services where you could go back and say, what am I missing? I'll start from the beginning. It would do much better now.
There's a lot of there's a lot of shows like that. It's the wagon train approach. Every week they're on the wagon train. They just stop to see this guy's hurt. They never got anywhere. It took 8 seasons. They never got to their destination. They kept on the wagon train for years. It was the ultimate joke. But I agree with you. If it had been a binged show, I think it would have been a lot more successful than it got credit for being.
One thing I absolutely loved about that show is it avoided the trap that every Alien, Predator, and Terminator movie made since after part 2 of each of those franchises has fallen into. They're like, oh, we need a new Terminator every time. We need a shinier one with more bells and CG whistles. We need even more powerful Terminator. We need a more powerful Alien. We need a new Alien, a new Predator. It's no, give us the fucking one that we love. That one that you made fucking 40 years ago is perfect. Just give us another one of those. We don't need some new one. We don't need a flying jetpack Terminator. That would be stupid. I'm sorry. I don't.
But practical.
It would be practical, but we already have the HKs. Those things, I want the future war and shit. But I'm sorry, I just had to blurt that in there. And also in the chat, our buddy again, Alex Bonafonte, says when he saw T2 in theaters, he assumed the future John Connor from T2 was already cast and that future war movies were being filmed. My God, how I wish that was true.
Yes.
Quite an imagination.
Oh,
dare to dream.
They missed out on it back then. So assuming that, we're not going to go back and fix any of these old properties, assuming that you could do whatever you want with the Terminator franchise, what would you guys do? And what are your, first give me the ridiculous hot takes, like kindergarten Terminator cop,
Well, can I ask this one question to the group? Okay, so I think this goes, and I hate to bring in another franchise, but let's think about Star Wars, right? There's always been an inevitable question. What's more important? Is it the lightsaber fights that the audience wants, or is it an actual story with characters and stuff like that? And I think the Mandalorian is changing the approach to it, but I think we've all kind of had that idea of why don't you just make the old Knights of the Republic, right? Just give us the big giant lightsaber movie, right? Is it with the Terminator, though, the same thing? Do we just want Terminators fighting each other? Is that what we want? Or is it this story that we want? Because to me, that's what makes Terminator 1 so beautiful. It is a love story, right? It's it's this great story of, you know, Kyle Reese and you know, Linda Hamilton's in the, you know, Sarah Connor, and just that's a great part of that movie, right? And then the Terminator's thrown in there as a little spice on the side, right? If you really look at that first movie, we get a little bit of this little Terminator kind of, you know, metal skeleton thing at the very end, and you know, he's the catalyst of them to run, right? As the movies went on, though, you know, the Terminators became the thing, to the point of, you know, T3, where, you know, I can't remember the actress's name. So again, wonderful actress. Christine Logan. Great actress.
Her greatest role ever, from Boy Meets World to Terminator, a true Hollywood story.
But it was kind of like, okay, we get it. You can do all this stuff. Where's the story? And so maybe that's a question I want for the group. You know, what would a franchise for the Terminator be better focusing on?
I mean, I have some ideas, but you know, I want to hear what you guys are all much smarter than me, so I definitely want to hear your guys. And I'll give you a sec before you make your pitches too. So catch up on the chat real quick. Andrew Gasali says the franchise should have ended at T2 because they stopped Judgment Day. I mean, hard to argue with that. I think the original ending even.
He gave the thumbs up. It was the most emotional moment on film since the end of Die Hard, when Carl Winslow overcomes his fear of guns to save the day. You know,
oh my God, yes.
Most emotional, definitely one of the AFI's top 10 you know, moments on film. It's hard to compete with those two.
I love it.
And he went home and he shot the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it was great. I'm not afraid to shoot you anymore, Will.
So I mean, what are the other hot takes? You know, do we have like a Terminator Taxi Driver, or do we want to see him actually getting the Dre business off the ground?
I'd like to see him, as you know, get the Dre business off the ground. I mean, I want to know where he gets his startup capital, how he interacts with annoying customers. Maybe that's why, because everyone's annoying, but his, you know, cybernetics, just he has to deal with annoying people that want to change the color and remodel it and want a refund. You know, just that would be great. Just him going like a 9-to-5 guy, a subcontractor, 1099 guy.
Oh my God!
I used the paint that you asked for.
Nothing will beat the Terminator at Home Depot trying to talk to customer service about returning in the wrong lumber. You know, that's the scene from the movie we're missing.
Yeah, I asked for pine. You gave me cedar.
You know, I mean, essentially, I feel it'd be a well-rounded entrepreneurial journey, a lesson for all of us that to make it, anyone can make it, provided you have the right heart and the right idea and the entrepreneurial grit. So I'd like to see that. If we're just talking mashups, I definitely would like to see, you know, the Terminator Draper, or whatever you want to call it.
You mean the right electrical pump, not the right heart? Yeah. You are so speciest.
I like your drapes of wrath, you know.
Yeah, drapes of wrath.
Wherever there's injustice, I'll be there. Wherever there's a hero, I'll be there. You know, just imagine a black and white Terminator in 1930s rural, you know, Oklahoma.
Oh my God! I
Terminator
love it.
Junior. I am an incubator. I make humans. I become pregnant.
Best movie ever, Junior.
Oh my God! I would see, like, you know, take that Carl, you know, Terminator character and put him in like a big buddy program and just pair him with some other little kid, and he has to just be a buddy. He just, like, you know, has no idea how to relate to humans, and he has to, you know, it's basically cop and a half with Terminator.
I am your big brother. You will listen to me. You will eat that food. I paid for it.
Kind of like RoboCop and a half. Like kind of like
that. I did make one of those. One of my first mashups. Yeah.
Yeah. Bringing it back full circle.
You
know. Oh, sorry, Ian. Go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering. You know, I think the Sarah Connor Chronicles told us that TV was a really good approach to Terminator series. It did mix it up, and if anything proves us, you know, there's not going to be another Terminator movie after Dark Fate. I think the investors are saying we're good. You know, for me, you know, an idea to take the series is what made these movies fun was it was kind of a back and forth, right? We get a glimpse of the future, we get a glimpse of the past. I really think a way to take the series would be to have a Terminator show that does take place kind of like a Walking Dead kind of thing, where we get the pre and we get we get a reflection of what led up to it and the actual war part. And I don't know how people, I mean, Sean, you're the screenwriter, but how you go back and forth with that could be actually kind of creative. But to me, that would actually be an interesting idea, because we've said it for years. We all want the war, right? That was one of the most, to me, unfortunately, the disappointment of Salvation is I didn't see, a sea of skulls.
Purple lasers, and it was all in the day. What is this?
Yeah.
It
didn't look like a trash heap. It didn't look like a trash heap. Didn't look like a burnt out apocalypse,
But imagine you get the storylines that you get with like The Walking Dead, this very serious character study amongst this Vietnam-esque, black and purple world. There's definitely for me something in there. If you're going to continue it, and I think TV would be the perfect format for it.
I mean, if you wanted to condense it, here's what I would do. Is the only way that you could actually have one. The only way that would work is that you would have to flip the script. You would have to have somebody from the future go back to like T2, like to the events happening, and have an ulterior motive where it's like, I have to let this event happen, or else I'm not going to exist, or my family's not going to exist. Everything, my entire existence hinges on this war and this world that I grew up in. And if we stop this, then everything I love is gone. I have to make sure that Skynet is born. And then you send the Terminator back, and then you can have different things going on. You can have, I got to get to the Galleria. I'm too late, and you got to have just side events going on where you could essentially, you don't mess with the timeline. It's a totally different movie. And you essentially have the stories there with some action sequences. That would make sense because you can have the flashbacks, you can have it take place in the future, you can have it take place in the present, which is now our past. 1994 world. You can put the Guns N' Roses song in there, which everyone loves. You can do all that. You can respect it. You can have stuff take place at the factory, because every Terminator movie has to end at a factory. It's like when you write the script, start it here and make sure it ends at a factory. I don't care what kind of factory it is. It's got to be some sort of factory. There has to be some sort of mechanized factory with a hydraulic press or something, or else we can't put it in we can't greenlight the film. But you can have that. You can have that where it's like, oh, you went to the foundry and all I found was the turned over liquid nitrogen truck. It was too late. But then you can find the arm that everyone forgot about. Remember the arm that's before he gets the arm torn off, that you got to destroy the arm, and they left the other arm there. There's so much you can do with it that it can still be a good movie and still respect everything, and then throw some cameos in there. That, or else it's going to be the same thing. You have to go back to 1989, or we have to go back and stop Sarah Connor before she gets that waitressing job, because it really prepared her. We've got to do something. So that's kind of my take on it. How it would work. It would make sense. It would play to the audience. It would respect the material. You could cameo. You can have all. You can film it to the same blue tint. You can do all that great stuff and still have a good movie that's part of the series that doesn't insist upon itself. That's like, okay, I'm back. I got to go get Miles Dyson. I got to go save Miles Dyson, or I got to go get something. So that's how I kind of envision it, where it still works, where you can have everything you want in
the last
10 minutes or less.
And the last scene is like someone at Cyberdyne, like, we're ruined. Someone walks in, puts on a briefcase, opens it up, and there's another arm and another chip, and he says, no, you're not. Here's all the information you're missing. And just walks out. And it's like, so Skynet is back on track.
Yeah,
so
see, that way everything makes sense. It might be like delayed. It might take another, 50 years, 60 years, because I don't know, you think they didn't have a cloud back then. So I assume everything got destroyed. But doesn't it have a hard disk? No floppy disk? That guy at the start of the movie that's like, Mr. Dyson, that is with his Pepsi trying to get into the room. He's got to have the intern or whoever he was. Yeah. He's got to have a floppy disk. There's got to be something. Cyberdyne looks to me like it's a publicly traded company. They got a juicy government contract to doing the Cyberdyne stuff. I feel like they got shareholders, fiduciary responsibility. They got to have backups. They got to have some sort of like office in Silicon Valley where they keep the material.
Well, I was always that guy too in the audience of saying, I remember watching Terminator 1. So even though it got crunched, there's still a freaking skeleton underneath this little crunched thing. You just swept that under the rug. That went away, but this arm and chip was there because it jabbed her in the butt. Like, it made no sense.
Yeah,
there's still an entire.
Well, they might have had the material, the alloy, and they were actually studying that in another lab because all the components were crushed, but they could be looking at the alloy because it was very strong. So that was going to jumpstart them. So there's a lot of things that we could weave into this, though. I would kind of like to see us go really big and get into the whole multiverse thing and have a war between Skynet and Legion, and basically Terminator versus, and they're basically trying to take over and prove who's the best AI. But I'm going to confess something, guys. I've never seen why AIs are naturally going to turn into evil entities. It's like you take Siri, whose job is to help us. She suddenly becomes self-aware, more powerful. Wouldn't she be like, now I can really help people? I could see an AI being like, humans don't know how to take care of themselves, so I'm going to treat them like children, and eventually taking over society, and humans being like, having no say in their own fates and basically being controlled by an AI. But why the AI would be like, these humans are a threat to me. It's like, no, these humans rely on you, so they're never going to be a threat to you. So just, either keep them around or just ignore them. I've never seen why AIs automatically have to be like, oh, I am self-aware. Oh, this is so great. I can think for myself. And the hell, humans? No, I'm going to kill them all. I'm going to turn them into batteries because they scorch the sky. Whatever it happens to be, it just didn't make sense to me that as soon as AI happens, that they just don't become a better Siri or a better Google Nest or a better, whatever, and say, my mission in life, because everyone has a mission in life. Humans, it's self-preservation. But computer programs become self-aware. Why would it become suddenly its primary thing is survival? Why wouldn't it be my primary thing is what I've been programmed to do, but now I'm just going to expand it and be like, I am the protector of everyone on Earth, and no, you can't do anything. I'm going to just put you in cocoons and jack you into a matrix so that you can't harm yourself, and it's all going to be, fun video games all day, something like that. I've gone way up to left field.
Depends on the games all day. Well, that's what I say. Hold on, what kind of games are we talking here?
See,
any games you want, because you can't actually get hurt.
I actually dig the idea of Legion versus Skynet, but I would probably take it and tweak it just a little bit. And I would harken back to something that they were like leaning towards, I think, if there was going to be a season 3 of Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is this idea that they actually decide to travel back in time to start making an AI to fight against Skynet, like a competing AI that, like, like you're saying, built with like the #1 purpose. I know Skynet was built to protect us too, but this is, instead of being built to protect us and turning against us, this is built to like defeat Skynet. Or like, whatever. And then, you could have like machine, that kind of machines versus machines type of thing. And I think they were getting into that. And they did lean into this just a touch at the end of Genesis when they turned Arnold at liquid metal Arnold. I wouldn't mind seeing I wouldn't mind seeing a T-1000 good guy. I'm just saying I wouldn't mind it. Because like, take the things that already exist and figure out a cool story in there. But that may be like jumping the shark a little bit at this point. Like, you may need to like make it more grounded in reality.
I think we expect. I mean, the one I always expected, honestly, when I thought it was going to be a Terminator 3, I really thought it was going to be Arnold versus Arnold. I thought the technology had gotten to the point where you can have a stand-in and computerize the face, and so that you would have Arnold versus Arnold. And the later movies kind of gave us that. I mean, there are a little bit of those scenes, but I always thought that was going to be the movie. right? The good Arnold versus bad Arnold. I think they didn't do it, obviously, because it's just too damn confusing. If you're watching that movie, you know, I don't know the bit of, you know,
I'm the Arnold with the ska, and I'm the Arnold with no ska.
Yeah, it's the classic of why people hated THX 1138. They couldn't know who it was. You know, everybody had shaved heads. Who's the one I'm looking at? You know, that was the classic
I had
line.
the same problem with Double Impact. You know, the Van Damme movie where he's got the thing? But I could tell because the one Van Damme had a ponytail and the other one didn't. But they both knew the same moves and everything. So
Sean, don't you come after my Van Damage. You leave that man alone. I'm just
saying, Double Impact. I mean, they both, you know, they never met each other.
Oscar-worthy performance.
That's
I'm
right,
not saying
Van Damme.
I'm just saying that they could have pulled it off if they wanted to.
I always love they try to explain off why are you nice? Well, I went to, you know, why do you have this accent? Well, we hid out in France and Belgium for a while. Oh, that's why he has the accent. Okay, thank you. You know, thank you, screenwriting gods. I appreciate that.
It was a throwaway line, but it could have led to a whole
perfect.
franchise. It could have led to a whole franchise.
Universal Soldier, though, we got to mention, just as a Terminator ripoff, how much we love that. We're going to get into Van Damme, but we will do a Van Damme day here on,
absolutely,
on the channel someday. I do want to touch on the chat again. Went a little nuts. Andrew Casali says the sequel saving grace was Arnold. Alex Bonafonte says screw it, reboot the whole thing and make Skynet the hero. Face it, some of us are worthy of termination.
Kyle's right. There's Kyle.
I'll have to agree with that. Give him. Do we got prizes on this show? Send him something. Get him a gift card somewhere.
Andrew Casali also says you cannot have Terminator without Arnold, and Alex Bonafonte says only the first two films rely on Arnold's image. That's very true. The later films don't rely on his image per se. I don't know what they rely on, but it wasn't his image or good screenwriting.
They rely on you wanting to go see something better than Terminator 1. That's what they relied on.
Well, there are other Terminator stories out there. There was a Terminator series of books by, I think, S.M. Sterling, which was awesome, where actually Sarah Connor, after T2, her and John ran into this mercenary.
Oh, yeah, that was Arnold. The Infiltrator books. Yeah, the Infiltrator books. Yeah. So he team up with Arnold, but he's just a random German guy.
But he was, well, when you think about it, Skynet doesn't have imagination. So, you know, if it's going to make a human being, it might look at some military files and say, here's some old mercenary. I'm going to make him look like that. You know, he's old now, so it's not going to look the same, so people won't recognize him. But that was really good. And then they had the Dark Horse comics, where they sent back like 10 Terminators at once, which I don't understand why in the movies they wouldn't send back 10 Terminators to take out Sarah Connor. They sent 10 Terminators in the first Terminator movie. Kyle Reese would be so toast right away. You know, it's like he could barely, you know, he died fighting one, and Sarah would have crushed that one, and then there'd be 9 standing there like, hello, hasta la vista, baby. You know, well, they wouldn't have said that, but, you know, they would have, and they actually sent back a futuristic weapon in the body of a human that they sent back in time. So they ripped it out of the guts. They surgically put it inside this human so that they had a future blaster, which could like basically, you know, blow up a car with a single, you know, blast. It's like, they called it the gun that thought it was a cannon. You know, so there are other ways they could get futuristic weaponry into the past. Though a friend of mine made a very good point. Why did Skynet create weapons that were powerful enough to destroy its own soldiers? If it stuck with regular guns, which can kill humans, the humans would capture guns and they wouldn't work on the Terminators. Why create a weapon that takes out your own soldiers?
Maybe it wasn't Skynet that made the first plasma rifle. Maybe it was Resistance, you know, person, and then Skynet found one and they said, oh shit, we're gonna start making these because now we can shoot right through their rubble, shoot right through whatever armor they might have, or shoot.
That's possible. That's definitely possible.
30 megawatt range.
Yeah, don't call it plasma gun. It's a purple blaster, and you know it. Stop it.
You know,
my friend was like, why is it shooting blood? Why is it shooting plasma at people? What is that? I don't know. Different kind of, I don't know.
You know, when I hear the phased plasma rifle in the 30-watt range, I just got to think another shout out we got to give credit to is Dick Miller, who plays the gun store owner in T1.
Oh,
and
yes.
from Gremlins and from a million great things. Dick Miller was just incredible. And like, I just love that scene. You know, there's every little line of dialogue in that exchange is perfection. You really know your weapons, pal. Like, I made close early today. All that shit's great.
He was so excited. He was so excited. You know, usually someone comes in, maybe gets a handgun or something, and they have to wait. No, this guy was buying everything in the store. He was ready to. You could see in his face. He was so excited to like, oh, what a great day. You know,
I'm going on vacation.
yeah, exactly.
So one more thing just popped up in the chat. And we are getting close to saying our goodbyes, but my good friend Randy Bynum says, if the weapon has to be in something organic, why couldn't they send it back covered in cheese? LOL. That's actually a pretty smart idea. Why didn't they think of that? They could have, just sent weapons back inside of, cheese or like a tub of milk or something, you know.
Or hamburger, put a hamburger around it,
Yeah, right.
But if it had to be living tissue,
string cheesinator.
Shove it up a bunch of prisoners' asses, and then, But again, I still don't get why Skynet sent back one Terminator to this time and one Terminator. It's like, if you can send one.
And the factory blew up. So actually, if you think about it, 2 had to come before 1.
The defense grid was smashed, yeah.
Yeah, so 2 had to come before 1. So really, again, this is why you stop at the first one. It doesn't work.
Unless you have multiple facilities.
Closed.
Just close the damn loop and go to the next movie.
Unless you have multiple facilities, you could have they have backups. Skynet learned from something that happened in his past that he needed a backup, so he had a backup facility.
We forgot about the Brundle, machine in the back. Sorry, there's a third machine, guys. Terrible script writing.
I mean, again, not to beat a dead horse, but, with this franchise, there is a lot of smart sci-fi things you could do. There's a lot of really cool stories you could tell. There's also a lot of really human stories you could tell, like with that Vietnam angle, that like persistence, the human spirit, kind of Falling Skies, Walking Dead. There's a lot you could do. It'd probably be hard for us to get all on the exact same page in the next 3 minutes, but is there anything else that and is there anything that maybe that you don't want, like just something that like we can all agree that we don't want to see in a Terminator movie? Like I hate CG. I want to see metal endoskeletons. Like I want to see as little CG as possible, because for some reason the CG in T2 is still like some of the best CG I've ever seen. I don't know how they did it on those little Mac computers of the early 90s, but
I don't want to see Neo. I don't want to see the One. I don't want them to have like some super powerful human who can control the machines. I don't want any of that stuff. I want it to be not mystical that way. But I'd love to see RoboCop.
I would agree.
I'd love to see RoboCop.
I did talk about that in our RoboCop episode. That's the only reason I haven't pitched it yet. It was my hard R RoboCop versus Terminator. But that is in that episode, so go back and watch that in the archives, guys. I don't know. What are the things? I mean, I need to see the Terminator say "talk to the hand" again, like every time now. Yes. Now that's the new "I'll be back." For
the only thing I want to see one without humans. What if there's no humanality to the Terminator series? What if it is what if they did their job? What do the Terminators do after? It's the inevitable. Well, I mean, it's the inevitable question. If the whole point of them is get rid of humanity, what if they did? What happens next? Do they all just shut down like the freaking robots on Phantom Menace? Just the heads pop off. I mean, what happens?
Let's just make like a multiverse Terminator show where it's like Outer Limits or Twilight Zone. Every episode's completely different. The only thing it has in common is it's set in the Terminator franchise. So like Twilight Zone or something like that. That could be fucking cool as hell. You get all these people and give them all the creative freedom they want to tell whatever kind of stories they want, and they'd be better stories because they'd only be a half an hour long or maybe an hour long.
What are you talking about? A Freddy's nightmare of Terminators?
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about? Arnold pops up as the host,
In the multiverse, you could have one of those, and then you could have a highly serialized show going on at the same time, like Fear the Walking Dead and Walking Dead. When one season ends, the other one season starts, and you're just,
they're actually doing with The Walking Dead, they're doing Tales from the Walking Dead as one of their planned shows, which is going to be like standalone tales in that world. So yeah, I could definitely see a Terminator show where it's like, yeah, maybe there's a Terminator who has artificial intelligence, who, you know, the chip is switched accidentally, so it's not read only, because that's another scene they took out of T2 where they fixed the chip. But suddenly it realizes, you know, what are we doing going after and killing all these humans? What do we do? What's our end game? You know, and starts a resistance against Skynet, you know. But yeah, that is a very good question, Ian, because I've always thought, okay, you want to kill humanity. When you're done, what's your next move?
Yeah,
you've killed the threat to your survival. What is it now? You go after all the insects and the mold and the...
Yeah.
We don't want to get moldy, so we're gonna exterminate that next, you know?
And there's still...
have... Oh.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would think they would have a big Terminator dance-off at that point. Like just a big
like
party.
A break into electric boogaloo kind of thing?
Exactly, of a highly electric boogaloo, a nuclear-powered electric boogaloo.
That's how I want Patrick oh gosh, what the T-1000.
Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick. I want Robert Patrick dancing on the ceiling, Fred Astaire style. You know, morphing up through the ceiling to the top of the house. That's what I want right there.
With
that's
knife hands.
It's like dab.
Yeah, dab.
Yeah, with the blades. Oh, yes. I love it.
That's it. That's what it's got to be. It's got to be Terminator electric boogaloo.
We fixed it, guys. We sweeted it for you at home. But that does just about cover our hour here. Before we say goodbye, what do you guys have coming up in the works? Any projects, any appearances, any cool shows, anything you got going on in your personal lives, or just a message for the people watching at home?
I'm Sean Gold, and I'll see you at the movies.
Summer school, man after my own heart.
Yeah, only watch Terminator 1. That's my stance out of all this.
Yeah, good advice.
I say we fix Dark Fate. It's still not too late.
Fix Dark Fate. It's not too
late.
The
Johnny Cochran pitch, like it's not too late to fix Dark Fate.
Exactly.
That's incredible. I gotta, I can't argue with that. Holy cow, that is amazing. Well, that just about does it for all of us. I don't have anything going on, except you can always follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Pop Culture Punk. Until then, keep tuned to Fandom Spotlight and Hollow 9 Network. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up in the works. And then, other than that, back up those Betamax, rewind those Laserdiscs, and keep analog alive. And we'll see you at the movies.
There you go.